Hello, everybody. This is Professor Rob Alexander, and today I'm going to lecture on one of my favorite chapters. This is Chapter 8, Love and Communication in Intimate Relationships. And as always, take time to pause the video, look up terms. If I'm talking too fast and you need to slow things down, that's what that pause button is for. All right, go ahead and take out your notes, get your pen or pencil ready, and let's just go ahead and dive into Chapter 8, Love and Communication in Intimate Relationships. Now, when we talk about love being one of the most profound human emotions, and it manifests itself in many various forms all across the world and across cultures, it's a powerful force. And, in intimate relationships, almost all individuals, like regardless of their sexual orientation, it crosses all ethnic boundaries. Love is a powerful thing. Love is both a feeling and an activity. So we can feel love for someone and act in a loving manner, but love does not give us perfection, but it does sometimes give meaning to that particular relationship. In fact, sociologist Ira Riggs suggests that a more important question to ask is not if one is feeling love, but is love I feel the kind of love on which I can build a lasting relationship or marriage, right? So the main topics for this chapter is friendship and love, love and sexuality, how do I love thee, the approaches and attitudes related to love. We're going to spend some time talking about jealousy, making love last from passion to intimacy, the nature of communication, sexual communication, developing communication skills, and conflict and intimacy, right? So now, when we talk about friendship and love, although love and friendship are alike in many ways, some crucial differences make love relationships both more rewarding and more valuable. Like the best friend relationships are similar to a spouse and lover relationships in a lot of different ways. So there's a level of acceptance, there's trust involved, there's respect, there's levels of confiding, understanding, spontaneity, right? Spontaneity means things happen spontaneously, they happen on the fly, and both folks are involved and they enjoy it. Mutual acceptance. Levels of satisfaction and happiness with the relationship are also similar in both groups, in love and friendship. But what separates friends from lovers is that lovers have much more fascination and greater sense of exclusiveness, right? You're hoping that your partner is yours, right? And this can be different than a friendship because obviously you tend to have other friends, right? So the love has greater potential for distress and conflict and mutual criticism. It runs deeper and stronger than a friendship. Friendship appears to be the foundation for strong loving relationship, because there tends to be some of the similar things like shared interests and values, acceptance, trust, understanding, and enjoyment are at the root of friendship and the basis for love, right? So adding the dimensions of passion and emotional intimacy alters the nature of the friendship and creates new expectations and possibilities. So with men and women marrying later than ever before, right? Like as we talked about in chapter 7, men and women marrying later, that's an integral part of the workforce because close friendships are more likely to be a part of the long-term relationship goals in people's lives. So the support of good friends is in fact a more significant factor in determining longevity than close family ties. Partners still need to communicate and seek understanding regarding the nature and the activities and degree of emotional closeness they find acceptable in their partner's friendships. Boundaries should be clarified and opinions shared. Many couples find friendship acceptable and even desirable. Like other significant issues involving partnership, success is balancing a love relationship and other friendship depends on the ability to communicate concerns, the maturity of the people involved, and the willingness to understand the mix of friendship and love as it affects marital status. These are all important, right? So when we talk about love and sexuality are always going to be intertwined. They're intimately intertwined. Although marriage once was the only acceptable context for sexual intercourse, like I talked about in chapter 7, for most people, love legitimizes sexuality outside of the marriage. So with the friends with benefits standard that we set, right? Friends with benefits has almost become like a standard of sexual expression. We use individualistic rather than social norms to legitimize sexual behavior with others. Our sexual standards may have become personal rather than institutional. And what I mean by this is the shift to personal responsibility makes love even more important in sexual relationships. Two of the most important factors in sexual activity, however, are the level of intimacy in a relationship and the length of time the couple has been together, right? Time matters, despite what people think. Even those who are less permissive in their sexual attitudes, they tend to accept sexual involvement if the relationship is emotionally intimate and long-standing. People who are less committed or not committed to a relationship are less likely to be sexually involved. As the amount of time the couple has been sexually active grows, their comfort level with varied sexual activity increases, right? So the environmental factors involved in both the physical and the cultural setting play a role in the level of sexual activity. In the most basic sense, the physical environment affects the opportunity for sex. You have to have a physical environment, right? You have to have a place to have sex. Typically, sex often is a private act. The opportunity for it may still preclude the presence of parents, friends, roommates, or children. So the cultural environment also affects the decision whether to have sex. The value of one's parents or peers may encourage or discourage sexual involvement, and as may one's faith, right? So furthermore, a person's subculture, such as the university environment, a social club, the singles world, or the gay and lesbian community, all of this accounts for an important influence on sexual decision making. Now, so men and women, they still have different perspectives on love and sex. Though men and women, they mostly share they share more similarities than differences. They tend to have somewhat different perspectives, right? For example, men are more likely than women to separate sex from affection, a factor that heterosexual men see as evidence of sexual interest and intensity in the context of an ongoing romantic relationship is assertive, forceful, and even aggressive behavior on the part of the woman. Rather than viewing this behavior as inappropriate or threatening, men more often find it desirable. This contrasts with the perceptions of heterosexual women who more often perceive forceful behavior by men as related to power, right? Depending on, sometimes it could be power dynamics, or this is stereotypical thinking sometimes that we have, that the man is supposed to be more aggressive, right? So sometimes seem threatening and dangerous rather than sexually arousing. This could be off-putting. It could turn a woman completely off. So women see sexual activity as being more appropriate and desirable when their romantic partner engages in behavior that inspires their trust and confidence. They want to feel safe. Women want to feel secure. They want to have a high level of trust before they engage in sex, typically, right? So by that theory, there are gender differences in love. That love is central to a woman and peripheral to a man. That means that's on the outside. That's something that men may not think about. And this persists in popular culture, right? These are still social constructs, but the theory upholds gender differences in the behavior that deals with your instinct, the psychology of it. Thereby, we perpetuate the notion that men and women have both different views about sex and love and different desires within a relationship. However, the research continues to show that not only the demographics such as identity and race and social class explain variations in views and desires better than gender differences, but they also show that cultural differences override gender differences, right? So your background, your culture overrides gender differences. So traditionally, women were labeled good or bad based on their sexual experiences and values. So good women were virgins, right? They were virginal. They were sexually naive and passive. Whereas bad women were sexually experienced, independent, passionate. This perception, however, may be altered as women and men age. In spite of changing gender norms, society remains ambivalent about sexual activity and experienced women. Heterosexual men, they maintain, would be as likely as gay men to engage in casual sex if women were equally interested. Women, however, are not as interested in casual sex as a result. So heterosexual men do not have as many willing partners as gay men. Gay men are especially likely to separate love and sex, statistically speaking. Although gay men still value love, many also value sex as an end itself. Furthermore, they place less emphasis on sexual exclusiveness in their relationships. Many gay men appear to successfully negotiate sexual open relationships. Keeping the sexual agreement they make seems to matter most to them, most of these men, whereas lesbian women tend to engage in sex less often than gay male couples or heterosexual couples. For many lesbian women, caresses, non-genital to genital stimulation, right? Non-genital to genital stimulation and affectionate foreplay are the preferred expressions of sexuality and love, right? So when we talk about celibacy in a society that often seems obsessed with sexuality, it may be surprising to find individuals who choose to be celibate as a lifestyle. Celibacy, or abstaining from sexual activity, right, is not necessarily a symptom of a problem or disorder. People think, oh, because you're celibate, there gotta be something wrong with you. There has to be some type of thing you're going through. It's not a symptom of problem or a disorder. It is important to note that though some researchers blur the lines, the definitions of celibacy with asexuality, the absence of a traditional sexual orientation in which there is little or no sexual attraction to males or females, the differences do in fact exist, right? When we talk about implicit in this discussion is consideration about what constitutes a normal level of sexual desire. The term asexuality implies an assumption that some level of sexual desire is normal. Celibacy may be a choice for some, such as those who have taken religious vows or are in a relationship in which non-sexual affection and respect provide adequate fulfillment. For others, it is a result of life circumstance, such as the absence of a partner or imprisonment sometimes. Still others report very low interest in sex or express concern over the spread of HIV or other STIs, sexually transmitted infections. Individuals who choose celibacy may report a better appreciation of the nature of friendship. In giving up their sexual pursuits, celibate individuals may learn to relate to others without sexual tension. Although these traits may also be developed within a sexual relationship, those who chose celibacy as a lifestyle may feel that it frees up energy for personal growth or other kinds of relationship. For most people, love and sex are closely linked in the ideal intimate relationship. Love reflects the positive factors, such as caring, that draw people together and sustain them in relationship. Caring draws people. Trust draws people together. Sex reflects both emotional and physical elements, such as a closeness, a sexual excitement, and differentiates romantic love from other forms of love, such as parental love or friendship love, right? Sibling love. Although the two are related, they are not necessarily connected, right? One can exist without the other. It's possible to love someone without being sexually involved, and it's possible to be sexually involved without love, right? These two things don't necessarily have to have a connection. Now we're going to talk about the styles of love. This came up. Sociologist John Lee describes the 6 basic styles of love. These styles of love, he cautions, reflect relationship styles, not individual styles. So the style of love may change as a relationship changes or when individuals enter different relationships. The 6 basic styles of love are Eros. This was an ancient Greek god of love, the son of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and fertility. The Romans called him Cupid. As a style of love, Eros is the love of beauty, right? So erotic lovers are passionate and delight in that tactile, the sensual, the immediate. They are attracted to beauty, though beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We know that. So they love the lines of the body, its feel and touch. They are fascinated by every physical detail of their beloved. Their love burns brightly and is idolized, but soon flickers and dies. Now we talk about mania, from the Greek word madness, is obsessive, possessive love. For manic lovers, nights are marked by sleeplessness and days by pain and anxiety. The slightest sign of affection brings ecstasy for a short while, only to disappear. Satisfactions last for but a moment before they must be renewed. Manic love is a roller coaster love, right? And this brings us to the third, which is ludus, from the Latin word play. It's playful love. So for ludic lovers, love is a game, something to play at rather than to become deeply involved in. Love is ultimately ludicrous, right? Encounters are casual, carefree, and often careless. Nothing serious. is the model of a ludic lover. Those with a ludic style thrive on attention and are often willing to take risk, right? When we talk about storge, from the Greek word for natural affection, is the love between companions. It is wrote from Lee, love without fever, tumultuous, or folly, a peaceful and enchanting affection. It usually begins as a friendship and gradually deepens into love. If the love ends, that also occurs gradually, and the people often become friends once again, right? So we talk about agape, from the Greek word of brotherly love. It's the traditional Christian love that is patient, undemanding, and it's altruistic. So altruistic is like all encompassing, right? There is no expectation or reciprocation. It is the love of saints, martyrs. Agape is more abstract and ideal than concrete and real. It is easier to love all of humankind than an individual in this way. So pragma, from the Greek word business, a practical love. Pragmatic lovers are first and foremost business-like in their approach to looking for someone who meets their needs. They use logic in their search for a partner, seeking background, education, personality, religion, and interests. They are compatible with their own. If they meet a person who satisfies their criteria, erotic, manic, or other feelings may develop, right? So when we talk about the triangular theory of love, this was developed by psychologist and educator Robert Sternberg. He emphasizes the dynamic quality of love relationships. So according to this theory, love is composed of three elements: intimacy, passion, decision/commitment. Each can be enlarged or diminished in the course of a love relationship, which will affect the quality of the relationship. They can also be combined in different ways. Each combination produces a different type of love, such as romantic love, infatuation, empty love, and liking. Partners may combine the components differently at different times in the same love relationship, right? So when we talk about the components of love, they consist of wanting to promote your partner's welfare, feeling happiness with your partner, holding your partner in high regard, being able to count on your partner in times of need, being able to understand your partner, sharing yourself and your possessions with your partner, receiving emotional support from your partner, giving emotional support to your partner, being able to communicate and your partner about intimate things, valuing your partner's presence in your life. How do I love thee? Further approaches and attitudes related to love. So the kinds of love is liking. That's just intimacy only, right? Infatuation is passion only, right? So romantic love, intimacy and passion. Compassionate love, intimacy and commitment. Fatuous love, passion and commitment. Consummate love, intimacy, passion, and commitment. Empty love, decision and commitment only. And a non-love is absence of intimacy, passion, and commitment, right? So when we look at the geometry of love, the perfectly matched couple, top left, where's the passion, the intimacy, passion, and decision, commitment, they're even. Okay, a moderately mismatched relationship, top right, that's going to be a little bit of a mismatch. You can see that slightly off. Then we have the bottom left, closely matched relationship. We're slightly off. And then bottom right, we have the severely mismatched relationship. Now, I was always taught to thrive for the perfectly matched relationship, but I also, as I get older, I have come to terms with a lot of my relationships have been closely matched relationships, and they've still been fruitful and very valuable to me, right? And they're not always going to be that perfectly matched relationship. And sometimes our weaknesses can be our partner's strengths, and they can play off one another. Okay. Now, approaches and attitudes related to love. Now, there are different types of love. The infant caregiver attachment, the attachment's bonds, formation, and quality depend on the attachment's object, responsiveness, and sensitivity. So when the attachment object is present, the infant is happier. That could be shared toys, discoveries, right? That could be a pacifier. It could be a bottle. It could be a teddy bear. And the infant coos, right? It makes little baby sounds. It talks baby talk, it sings. The infant shares feelings of oneness with that affectionate object, right? And I've seen all my kids go through that, right? Whenever I had their affectionate object present, they were happier, they were more responsive. In romantic love, feelings of love are related to the lover's interest and reciprocation. When the lover is present, the person feels happier. Lovers share experiences and goods and give gifts. Lovers cool, they sing, we talk baby talk, right? Lovers share feelings of oneness, right? But adults with secure attachment found it relatively easy to get close to other people. They felt comfortable depending on others and having others depend on them. They didn't frequently worry about being abandoned or having someone get too close to them. More than anxious, ambivalent, and avoidant adults, they felt that others usually liked them. They believed that people were generally well-intentioned and good-hearted. So their love experiences tended to be happy, friendly, trusting, okay? They accepted and supported their partners. On average, their relationship lasted 10 years, right? But when we have adults with the anxious slash ambivalent attachment, this is the opposite. They believe that other people did not get as close as they themselves wanted. They often worried, they were anxious that their partners didn't really love them or would leave them. They also wanted to merge completely with another person, which sometimes caused others to withdraw. More than others, they felt that it is easy to fall in love. Their experiences in love were often obsessive and marked by desire for union, high degrees of sexual attraction, and jealousy. So their love relationship lasted for 5 years. So the adults that have avoidant attachments, they felt discomfort in being close to other people. They were distrustful and fearful of being dependent. More than others, they believe that romance seldom lasts, but that at times it could be as intense as it was in the very beginning. When we're talking about the honeymoon phase, is the beginning, right? But after you get past that, the partners wanted more closeness than their partner did. So avoidant lovers feared intimacy and experienced emotional highs and lows like a roller coaster and levels of jealousy, right? So their relationships lasted an average of 6 years. Okay. So in adulthood, the attachment style is developed in infancy, combined with the sexual desire and the caring behaviors to give rise to the romantic lover. However, it is also important to know that an individual's past does not necessarily determine the future course of his or her relationships. So we have the unrequited love, and as most of us know from painful experience, love is not always returned. People may suffer tremendous anguish when they feel that they have been rejected or ignored, even if the relationship was imagined. Unrequited love that is not returned is distressing for both the would-be lover and the person that rejects them. So the would-be lovers may have positive and intensely negative feelings about their failed relationship. The rejectors, though, they often feel negative about the experience, right? So unlike the rejectors, the would-be lovers feel that the attraction is mutual and that they've been led on, and that the rejection had never been clearly communicated. So the rejectors, in contrast, feel that they have not led the other person on at all. Moreover, they feel guilty about hurting him or her. Nevertheless, though, many find that the other person's persistence, intrusiveness, and annoying behavior, they wish he or she would simply get the hint and go away. So rejectors view would-be lovers as self-deceiving and unreasonable, but the would-be lovers see their rejectors as inconsistent and mysterious. They're just trying to figure them out. When we talk about jealousy, many of us think about the existence of jealousy, and that proves that they are in love, or the existence of love is prevalent if there is jealousy. We may try to test someone's interest or affection by attempting to make him or her jealous by flirting with another person. So if our date or partner becomes jealous, the jealousy is taken as a sign of love. But provoking jealousy proves that only that the other person can be made jealous. Making someone jealous is dangerous, because jealousy and love are not necessarily companions. They don't necessarily go together. Jealousy may be a more accurate yardstick for measuring insecurity or immaturity than for measuring love. It is important to understand jealousy for several reasons. Jealousy is a painful emotion associated with anger, hurt, and loss. If we can understand jealousy, especially when it's irrational, then we can eliminate some of its pain. Jealousy can help cement or destroy a relationship. Jealousy helps maintain a relationship by guarding its exclusiveness, right? So when somebody becomes jealous, it might make them want to step their game up. But in its irrational or extreme forms, it can destroy a relationship by its insistent demands and attempts to control. So we need to understand when and how jealousy is functional and when it is not, right? So jealousy is often linked to violence in marriages and dating relationships. Furthermore, marital violence and rape are often provoked by jealousy. So rather than being directed at a rival, jealousy aggression is often used against the partner. Jealousy can be unreasonable, right? Based on fear or fantasies, unrealistic in reaction to a genuine threat or events. So unreasonable jealousy can become a problem when it interferes with the individual's well-being or that of relationship. So dealing with these irrational suspicions can often be very difficult. For such feelings touch deep parts of one's inner being. It touches deep things inside ourselves. So as we talked about jealousy previously, is often related to personal feelings or insecurity and inadequacy. The source of such jealousy lies within ourselves, not within the relationship. If we can work on the underlying causes of insecurity, then we can deal effectively with our irrational jealousy. Excessive jealous people may need considerable reassurance, but at some point, they must also confront their own irrationality and insecurity. If they do not, they emotionally imprison their partner. So jealousy may destroy the very relationship they have been desperately trying to preserve. So jealousy sets boundaries for the behaviors, okay, that are acceptable in relationships, but the boundaries can't be crossed without evoking jealousy, okay? Through a certain amount of jealousy can be expected in any loving relationship. It is important that partners communicate openly about their fears and the boundaries. Jealousy is a paradox because it doesn't necessarily signal difficulty between partners, nor does it have to threaten the relationship. When we are jealous, we may feel less attractive and acceptable to our partner. But jealousy can also enrich relationships and spark passion by increasing the attention the individual pay to the partner. So sex differences in the context and expression of jealousy have been documented. For example, men more than women are upset by a partner's sexual infidelity, whereas women more than men are upset by the partner's emotional infidelity. There's a difference, right? So the emotional is that connection, right? Where the sexual infidelity, it has to do with that physical connection. So, but jealousy is not always irrational. Sometimes there are valid reasons, such as the relationship boundaries being violated. But in that case, the cause lies within ourselves, but within the relationship as well. So if jealousy is well-founded, the partner may need to modify or end the relationship with the third party whose presence initiated the jealousy. So modifying the third party relationship reduces the jealousy response and more importantly symbolizes the partner's commitment to the primary relationship. So if the partner is unwilling to do that because of the lack of commitment or the unsatisfied personal needs or problems in the primary relationship, the relationship is likely to reach a crisis point. In such cases, jealousy may be the agent for profound change, right? Something has to come of it. Either you end that third party situation or the partners have to sever and go their different ways. So there's no set rules on dealing with jealousy. Each person must deal with it using his or her own understanding and insights. As with many life problems, jealousy has no simple answers, right? So it's difficult to determine how many people have extra marital or extra relational affairs because those involved may be reluctant to admit engaging behavior. So this is hard to determine. The negative terms and connotations associated with this behavior are affairs, cheating, sleeping around. So extra relational affairs are sometimes underreported and undetected, but we also know that they happen in what are supposed to be monogamous relationships. So according to the recent data, about 11% of Americans have had at least one extra relational affair, right? But in the more recent studies of couples, the average age of men who have the extra relational, extramarital affair is 33. The average age of women is 28. So nearly one quarter of them, 23% or one-fifth of the women, 19, indicated they had cheated during their current relationship. So, in terms of the motivations for cheating, some people found that both men and women, the sexual personality characteristics such as the need for excitement or the performance concerns, especially for women, relationship factors were most relevant to predicting sexual exclusiveness. Individuals who had engaged in non-exclusive behaviors reported more one-night stands. This is in spite of the fact that they also reported they were having regular sex with their primary partner. So what both of these men and women shared was lower relationship happiness, right? So when we're talking about dating and living together, which we refer to as cohabitating relationships, both cohabitating couples and those in committed relationships usually have expectations of social exclusiveness, sexual exclusiveness. But like some married men and women who take vows on exclusivity, these couples do not always remain sexually or emotionally exclusive. Research has revealed that the cohabitors are more likely to have relationships outside of the primary one, suggesting that perhaps they have a lower investment in their unions, right? When we talk about extradidactic involvement and exclusive marriage and partnership in marriages and committed relationships, we assume the emotional and sexual exclusivity, mutuality, sharing, okay? So extradidactic, extramarital sexual relationships are assumed to be destructive of marriage and committed partnerships. Non-sexual heterosexual relationships may also be judged as threatening, right? So how can the person prove that he or she still has a commitment, right? The commitment is assumed. It can never be proved oftentimes. So the extramarital sex may imply to the partner, right or wrong, that he or she is sexually inadequate or uninterested, right? So making love last. How do we do that? Ultimately, the passion of a romantic love can be transformed or replaced by a quieter, more lasting love. Otherwise, the relationship will likely end, and each person will search for another partner who will once again ignite her or his passion. The kind of love that exists, what we might call intimate love, each person knows he or she can count on the other. The excitement comes from the achievement of other goals, from creativity, from work and child rearing, from friendships, as well as from relationship. The key to making love endure seems to be maintaining love's passionate intensity, but transforming it from intimate love into long-lasting love. Intimate love is based on the commitment and caring, and sometimes self-disclosure. When we reveal things about ourselves, that trust has to be established. So when we talk about commitment, it is an important component of intimate love. It reflects a continuance of relationship in the face of bad times as well as good. It also involves a shared future, a promise to be together, right? And we seem to be as much in search of commitment as we are in search of love and marriage. So a committed relationship has become almost a stage for courtship, somewhere between dating and being engaged or living together. When we talk about caring, this involves the making of another person's needs as important as your own. It requires what the philosopher Martin Buber called an I-thou relationship, right? Buber described two fundamental ways of relating to people: I-thou and I-it. In an I-thou relationship, each person is treated as a thou. That is, as a person whose life is valued as an end in itself. In an I-it relationship, each person is treated as an it. The person has worth only as someone who can be used. When a person is treated as a thou, his or her humanity and uniqueness are paramount. So self-disclosure is a revelation of personal information that others would not ordinarily know because of its riskiness, right? When we self-disclose, we reveal ourselves, okay? Our hopes, our fears, our everyday thoughts to other people. And this can be vulnerable. Self-disclosure deepens others' understanding of us. It also deepens our own understanding, for we discover unknown aspects as we open up to others. Without self-disclosure, we remain hidden, right? Mysterious. People don't really learn us. Our partners don't learn us. So if others love us, such love makes us anxious. Are we loved for ourselves or for the image we present to the world? So being able to sustain love in the day-to-day world involves commitment, compassion, and most importantly, communication. Clear communication can take the guesswork out of a relationship. They subdue jealousy, they increase general satisfaction, and possibly they put couple therapists out of business. If there's no problems within relationships, right, then we wouldn't have a need for couple therapists. If the clear communication happened between lovers, we wouldn't need couple psychotherapy. That's the reality. So when we talk about communication, it's a transactional process by which we use symbols such as words, gestures, and movements to establish human contact, exchange information, and reinforce or change our own attitudes and behaviors and those of others. Communication takes place simultaneously within a cultural, social, and psychological context. These contexts affect our ability to communicate clearly by prescribing these rules. They're usually unwritten, they're usually unconscious for communicating about various subjects, including sexuality. The social context of communication refers to the roles we play in society as members of different groups, different cultures. For instance, as men and women, we play out masculine and feminine roles. And as members of marital units, we continue to act our roles as husband and wife. As members of cohabitating units, we perform heterosexual, gay, or lesbian cohabitating roles. Roles exist in relationships to other people. So the without the female role, there would be no male role. These are social constructs. Without a wife role, there would be no husband role, because roles exist in relation to others, right? We talk about status. Okay, a status is a person's position or ranking in a group. This is important. This is vital. In traditional gender roles, men are accorded higher status than women. In traditional marital roles, husbands are superior in status to their wives, like universally, right? This is cultural, but this is often worldwide. And in terms of sexual orientation, society awards higher status to heterosexual people than they do gay men, lesbian women, or bisexual or trans people. Because of this male and female disparity, heterosexual couples tend to have a greater power imbalance than do gay and lesbian couples. So when we talk about the nonverbal communication, what does that mean? There is no such thing as not communicating. Even when we are not talking, we are communicating by our silence, an awkward silence, a hostile silence, a tender silence. We're still communicating by our body movements, our head positions, our facial expressions, our physical distance from another person, and so on. We can make sounds that aren't words to communicate non-verbally. We scream, we moan, we grunt, we sigh, and so on to communicate a range of different feelings and reactions, right? But most of our communication of feeling is nonverbal. How do we radiate our moods, our happy moods? It invites our companionship. A silent mood could push people away, right? Joy is infectious. That means it catches on and latches on to other people. But depression, it can distance folks. So all without a word being said, the nonverbal expressions of love are particularly effective. A gentle touch, a loving glance, or the gift of a flower, right? So when we talk about the halo effect, how most people would deny that they are attracted to others simply because of their looks. We like to think we are infer that the qualities are still based on looks. This inference is based on what is known as the halo effect, the assumption that attractive or charismatic people also possess more desirable social characteristics than are actually present, than they actually manifest. So one of the most primal means of assessment is smell. Humans, like all animals, assign values to scents, recognizing those that affect them in powerful ways. So scent lets both sexes narrow their choices of potential partners by identifying these unspoken characteristics, such as the level of testosterone and ovulation that may lead towards mating. Essentially, the woman often covertly sends nonverbal signals of interest and availability. The woman may glance at the man once or twice and catch his eye. She may smile or flip her hair. If that man moves into her physical space, the woman then communicates interest by nodding, blinking, winking, leaning close, smiling, sexy smile, or even a sexy laugh, right? But if the man believes the woman is interested, he then initiates a conversation. Now we're talking about social constructs, right? Sometimes the woman could be the initiator, But the man can initiate a conversation with an opening line, which tests the woman's interest and availability. Now, there's some corny opening lines out there, but men use an array of opening lines. According to the woman, the most effective ones are innocuous, such as, you know what, I feel a little embarrassed, but I'd like to meet you. Are you a student here? The least effective lines are sexually blunt, such as, you're really turning me on right now, right? Fellas, we gotta work on our game. Now, in new relationships, we communicate directly about sex because although we may want to become sexually involved with the other person, we also want to avoid rejection by using indirect strategies such as turning down the lights, moving closer, touching the other person's face or hair. We can test his or her interest in sexual involvement by doing different things, right? But if he or she responds positively to our cues, we can initiate a sexual encounter. Because so much of our sexual communication is indirect, is hard to detect, is ambiguous, is nonverbal, there's a high risk of misinterpretation, right? And trust me, I know, I've gone through it. So when we talk about gay men and lesbian women like heterosexual people, we rely on both nonverbal and verbal communication and expressing sexual interest in others. So unlike heterosexual people, however, they cannot necessarily assume that the person in whom they are interested is of the same sexual orientation. They can't just make that assumption unless a person literally tells them. Instead, they must rely on specific identifying factors such as meeting at a gay or lesbian bar, wearing gay lesbian pride button, participating in gay lesbian events, or being introduced by friends to others identified as lesbian or gay. So in situations in which sexual orientation is not clear, some gay men and lesbian women use that gaydar, right? That's the gay radar in which they look for clues as to orientation. But still, this still doesn't determine exactly, right? So they give ambiguous cues regarding their own orientation while looking for cues from the other person. These cues can include mannerisms, speech patterns, slang, lingering glances. They may also include the mention of specific places for entertainment or recreation that are frequented mainly by lesbian women or gay men. Songs that can be interpreted as having gay meanings or movies with gay or lesbian themes. Once a like orientation is established, lesbian women and gay men often use nonverbal communication to express interest. As we begin the sexual involvement, we have several tasks they want to accomplish. First and foremost, they must practice safer sex. We should gather information about our partner's sexual history, determine whether she or he knows how to practice safer sex, use condoms. Unlike much of our sexual communication, which is nonverbal or ambiguous, practicing safer sex requires direct verbal communication. The second thing we got to do is heterosexual couples must discuss birth control. Unless both partners have agreed to try for pregnancy or one is sterile, contraceptive responsibility, right? Safer sex requires verbal communication. You got to be direct. This cannot be nonverbal. So in addition to communicating about safer sex and contraception, we need to communicate about what we like. Many of our needs and desires can be communicated nonverbally by movements or physical cues. But if our partner does not pick up our nonverbal signals or cues, we need to discuss them directly and clearly to avoid the unknown, right? So good communication is central to a healthy, intimate relationship. Unfortunately, it is not always easy to establish or maintain. The process of articulating our feelings about sex can be very difficult for several reasons. We rarely have role models for talking about sexuality. As children and adolescents, we probably never discussed sex with our parents, let alone heard them talking about sex, right? I never heard my parents talk about sex, period. So talking about sexual matters defines us as being interested in sex, and interest in sex is often identified with being sexually obsessive, immoral, right? It's a bad thing to be consumed with sex or even talk about. So if the topic of sex is taboo in your culture or household, we further risk being labeled as bad or promiscuous, right? We may believe that talking about sex will threaten our relationships. We don't talk about taboo sexual feelings, fantasies, or desires because we fear that our partners may be disgusted by it. Like, when is it a good time to bring it up, right? We struggle with that. We also are reluctant to discuss sexual difficulties or problems because doing so may bring attention to our own role in them, right? So being aware of communication skills and actually using them are two separate things. Even though we may be comfortable sharing our feelings with another, we still may find it difficult to discuss our sexual preferences and needs. Things might be too new, but the three keys to good communication are self-disclosure. That's when we reveal a little bit about ourselves, our history, our past. Trust needs to be established. That's the second one. And feedback. What's the feedback we're getting from our partner, right? Because then we can move forward depending on how our partner responds. So when we talk about self-disclosure, just like in the previous chapter, it creates the environment for mutual understanding. So most people still know us only through conventional roles we play as male, female, wife, husband, parent, child, etc. But those roles, they don't necessarily reflect our deepest selves. So if we act as if we are nothing more than our roles, we may reach a point in which we no longer know who we are. But when we talk about intimate relationships, the two words that most frequently pop up are love and trust. Love and trust. Trust is a primary characteristic we associate with love. Trust is a belief in the reliability and integrity of a person, right? So trust is a critical in a close relationship for two reasons. Self-disclosure requires trust because it makes us vulnerable. A person would not self-disclose if he or she believes the information may be misused. So the mocking can take place or a revealing of a secret, right? Another critical element in the communication is feedback. So this is the ongoing process of restating what you heard, checking the accuracy of what you heard, questioning, right? We got to clarify these messages. If someone self-discloses to a partner, his or her response to that self-disclosure is feedback, and the partner's response is feedback to that feedback, right? It's a continuous loop. It's a continuous process. The most important form of feedback for improving a relationship is constructive feedback, right? These are your expectations. We can't be shy around that. We have to be forthcoming. These are our expectations. Constructive feedback is vital. We can't avoid that, right? Folks, partnerships that avoid constructive feedback, they're doomed to fail, right? This might be a good opportunity for you to pause your video and check out the communication loop, the nonverbal that has to do with the physical closeness or proximity, eye contact, the touching, the tone, the volume, the pitch of the voice, the rate, the silence, the rate at which we talk, silence, right? Awkward silences. Sometimes silences that are not awkward. When we talk about the verbal, the language, the word choice, right? So conflict. So we still expect love to unify us, but sometimes it just doesn't. So two people do not become one when they love each other, although at first they may have these feelings or expectation. Their love may not be an illusion, but their sense of ultimate oneness. In reality, we retain our individual identities, our needs, our wants, our past, even while loving each other. It's a paradox, right? You know, it's a dilemma. The more intimate two people become, the more likely they are to experience conflict. In fact, the lack of arguing can signal trouble in a relationship because it may mean that the issues are not being resolved or that there's an indifference, right? The idea is to grow together. Sometimes that happens through arguments or conflict. Conflict itself is not dangerous to intimate relationships. It's a manner in which the conflict is handled. The presence of a conflict does necessarily indicate that love is waning or it's disappeared. And it may mean that love is growing. A willingness to accept and engage in conflict is not in non-destructive ways can assist couples in enhancing their relationship. So gender differences separate not only what couples argue about, right? But also how folks argue. And that can definitely take a toll on your health. So these differing views of conflict and conflict resolution affect each group's willingness to deal with sexual conflicts. So understanding these differences will help in resolving sexual problems and issues. So the sexual conflicts, common practice such as using sex as a scapegoat for non-sexual problems and using arguments as a cover-up for other problems frequently lead to additional disagreements and misunderstandings. So if we continue to cling to these patterns, that can interfere with problem solving in a relationship and it can inhibit conflict resolution, right? Statistics shows us this. So disagreements about sex, when we have a conflict about sex, it can be intertwined in a lot of different ways, okay? One of the ways a couple may have a disagreement about sex when it leads to conflict, for example, if that one person wants to be sexual and the other doesn't, they may argue, right? Because one person might be feeling inadequate or another person might complain that they're not getting sex enough. Sex can also be a scapegoat for non-sexual problems. So when a person becomes angry right? That other person may lash out and call them a lousy communicating for yelling, as instead of, you know, being nice about voicing their conflict or what they're going through. That person may take it out on a partner sexually, right? By calling him a lousy lover or not wanting to make love to he or she. So they argue about this love making rather than about the real issue, right? These are communication hangups. So an argument can be a cover up. If a person feels sexually inadequate and does not want to have sex as often as his or her partner, they may argue, and they may make others feel so bad and so angry that the last thing that their partner may be worried about is having sex with him or her. So for couples, when we have children, the relationship tends to follow a very predictable pattern of satisfaction in the early years, a decrease in satisfaction during the child rearing years, and a return to higher level after the children are grown. And awareness of this pattern can be helpful to couples whose levels of conflict are escalating, acknowledging a relationship changing nature, right? Acknowledging a relationship's changing nature, you want to always try to focus on the strengths of that relationship that each person brings to the relationship. They're always to adapt to the inevitable changes that occur over time. Changes are going to happen, right? So when we talk about conflict resolution, the way in which couples deal with conflict reflects and perhaps contributes to their relationship happiness. This is real, folks. This is not for play. So how we resolve conflicts, this is going to contribute to the overall relationship happiness. Remember that. Partners who communicate with affection and interest and who integrate humor when appropriate can use such positive effect to diffuse a situation, to diffuse a conflict, so it doesn't lead on to bigger and badder things within the relationship, right? I like that humor part. That's what I try to do when I'm communicating with my partner. Sometimes differences can't be resolved, but they can still be lived with, right? So if a relationship is sound, if a relationship is going smooth, differences can be absorbed without undermining the basic principle of disrespecting your partner. All too often we regard differences as threatening, right? But we know that from the previous slides, that's some good things can come from conflict, right? When you bring two people together, this is a unique expression of these two personalities. But if one person, let's just say one person likes to masturbate, that partner can accept it as an expression of her or his unique sexuality, right? So the coexistent focuses on the person we have the most power over ourselves. Okay, we got deep. So we got deep today. So when we talk about the final thoughts in terms of the friendship, the love and sexuality, we discussed how do I love thee and the different approaches. We also talked about jealousy, right? And we spent an absorbing amount of time talking about jealousy and communication. This chapter was very wordy. We covered a lot. Hopefully I gave you all the tools on how to communicate when you're in your intimate relationship, your romantic relationship, and even how to communicate when you're in a friendship, right? All of these take time. All of these are skill building techniques, right? Sometimes jealousy can bring about a deeper understanding for your partner, but it can also bring closeness. So as we learned in this chapter, conflict may not be necessarily a bad thing because we are resolving issues when there's a conflict, and jealousy doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Sometimes there is a certain closeness that happens when you become slightly jealous, right? So again, this has been chapter 8. We covered so much today. You'll have the opportunity to link this lecture and some of the things that I covered today with our homework assignment. This is Professor Rob Alexander signing off. All right. I look forward to talking to you all. Bye now.